Hey everyone, welcome back to the Story Behind the Story podcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Audrey McKeon, and today we're here with Erika Shalene Hull. Erika, please introduce yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. I am the mom of 6 kids. I am an entrepreneur and abuse survivor.
So I also am an abuse survivor. We have bonded over this before. There's so much juiciness to get into there. October, we know, is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. So this is a perfect time to be launching a book called
But That's Not Me, Changing the Story of Interpersonal Abuse.
Absolutely. So why did you write this book?
It's an interesting story, and I feel like it's the drama part that we don't talk too much about. But it's so much of my life. In 2019, I had was not within the same physical walls of my abuser. I'd been away for about 5 years, but still within the vicinity and still very much a part of my life because I had children with this person. And living in an area and state that is not my own. He moved me to a location that I had no connections to. So it was a really challenging time for those 5 years. And I was working really hard on a lot of healing. I had picked up my phone in 2014 because at that point in time, I had 4 living children. I had lost my oldest to suicide while I was captive by my abuser. And he did not allow us to attend my son's funeral. And so there was just a lot that was going on. My children were very young, and I was having to turn them over to him for visitation. And he had captured another victim at the time and utilizing her to really abuse myself. And I'm sure he was abusing her because I know that now. So it was a really hard time. And in 2019, I had built my business up and doing well on this side of life, and I wanted to move. And so I thought I was going to use the court system the way they're designed to. And I got a real swift kick in the ass of they are not there for the victims. They just are not. And I got attacked in a lot of other ways. And but in this process, I had done my own investigation. And in 2019, the summer of 2019, I found out that I was not the victim number that I thought, that he was actually a serial abuser, that I was victim number 8. Wow. I had spoken to all of these women, and he was currently manhandling and abusing victim number 9. And it just hit me. I was like, you know what? I can't continue to be silent. It wasn't being completely silent. As I said, in 2014, I picked up my phone because I had all these kids. I couldn't really get to therapy the same way. Therapy wasn't like it is now, where you could have it virtually. You had to go. And so I did my best, but it was really hard. So I picked up my phone and I just started talking. And I would speak to anybody who was listening because I don't know who's on the other side of the screen, right? Periscope was then, Instagram Live then came, and I just spoke my truth. And I just decided that no matter what, I wasn't going to be silent. So in 2019, I said, I need to stop I felt like I needed to raise my voice even louder. And so I approached a stranger. It was a really weird situation, but definitely one of those energies and powers driving you. Yeah. And I walked up to her and I said, I know this is going to sound really insane, but I think we are meant to write a book together. Would you please hear me out? And I proceeded to tell her a story of, I just realized and came to the realization of how deep and depraved the abuse actually was and had been, what I was still experiencing. And I wanted to provide the resource and story to at least my children. That was initially, we didn't write the book to actually publish it, which was really funny. And we started this in 2019 and we were like, what are we going to do now? And we had people read it and they're like, well, aren't you publishing this? I'm like, are we? So it's been, it's been a lot. It's just been a journey of healing. But it initially started out as I need to have a record and documentation of actually what happened to me. And it turned into, she realized that she was also writing part of her story that she hadn't come to terms with and hadn't healed from. And so then it became, we weren't writing my story, we were writing the story of women and what we've all endured. And we wanted to give a language to it, because that's the problem, is we don't have a cohesive language to speak about what's been happening to us since the beginning of time. And so it's really cool. I mean, I as much as it's a hard subject we're talking about, the book's really written in a way where you can read it, because it gives you the language part, the definition, so you know what kidnapping really is, what coercive control really is, what financial abuse really looks like. And then right alongside of it, we gave you either part of my story or somebody else's words of, here's an example, put it together, this is what it looks like. And it's really interesting when we learn that way, then we can go, oh wait, I know, so that is me. And we can stop saying, but that's not me, because it is. We are all victims and we have all experienced abuse. And to deny that is just to deny humanity exists. So we all need to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely. And I love that you've used this kind of collective voice of the woman who is telling this story. And we don't really know exactly, who these fragments and details came from. And we don't need to know. We don't need to know, because that's not the point. The point isn't he did this and she suffered this. This is the experience that we all need to collectively confront and change and heal from.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really cool, because I know doing this interview that you've read it, because you were one of my editors,
Yes.
and how much we did connect on it. So I know that you know this because you've already read it. And that's what we heard from a lot of our beta readers were, as much as we know this is your story, it wasn't, it's our story. They could see themselves in those words that we were saying. And so it's given some purpose to what I've gone through and what I continue to endure, because the abuse doesn't end just because you physically get away. Post-separation abuse is a huge, gigantic thing. And, in my story, number 9 got actually left right as the manuscript was being released in 2020. And so I only hope and wish healing for everybody. But I'm still in a situation where I have to deal with a really interesting and hard dynamic.
Absolutely. So that brings me to my next question, which is, who did you write this book for, and what results do you hope they'll get?
So sometimes we want to say I wrote it for people who've experienced abuse, but that's not necessarily true. It is. That's the primarily target. But really, it's for all women, because the 1 in 4 statistic is not true. We like to put numbers to it, but it's not 1 in 4 women experience domestic abuse, because domestic abuse is anywhere you reside for an extended period of time. So if you're at work for 8 to 10 hours a day, that's your domestic territory. If you volunteer in your community for 10, 15 hours a week, that's your domestic territory. Wherever it is that you're residing, that's what's going on. And so when somebody's harsh with you, or you're put down, or we're put in our place as women, that's abuse. And so it's not necessarily what's behind closed doors. It's what we're experiencing in the world today, especially now. And we can kind of bring it up. I mean, we have, whether you are on whatever side you're on, you could all admit that right now, especially in America and in this world, across the world, women are experiencing harsh and demeaning control and abuse. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us speaking similar language and being better allies for ourselves first, and then for others.
Yeah.
So if you equip yourself with the language and the knowledge, whether it's hard to read or not, because it is, sometimes it's hard to read. We don't want to talk about being raped in marriage, but it exists. We don't want to talk about being forced to have children and then loving those children, even though they came from a place that wasn't love.
Yeah.
They were not created in love, right? Those are hard conversations to have. Nobody wants to all the time. It's not like, oh, let me just pick up this book and have a light read, right? But it's so necessary for us to just start learning and broadening our knowledge, so then that we can be more equipped to not only see it around us, but to recognize it in those that are around us, and then speak up and say, you know what, that's not normal, nor is it okay, or that's not healthy. Is there something I can do to help? Because we need to be better allies for each other.
Yeah. It's also really true that just naming something kind of gives you power over it. Once you kind of understand something, it makes it much easier to confront and to deal with. I found it really cathartic reading through the book and recognizing how much of those things I'm no longer experiencing. And that's a celebration. But also some of the things that I can go, oh, that's still happening and that's still not okay. And it is a process. It's not like, it ends and then it's done. It is this healing process that goes on. So the third question is, what did you personally need to overcome in order to get this out into the world?
So I have severe levels of PTSD and the trickle down effects of depression and anxiety that comes on. And I have a lot of trauma blocks because those years were so intense, but it wasn't just those years. They were built upon a life of abuse.
Yeah.
The first time I was sexually molested, I was in kindergarten. I was about kindergarten age, about 5 or 6 years old. And it was with an older boy who was about 9 or 10 years old. But even in that instance, when my parents and his parents kind of blew it off and like, oh, that's just what boys do. They're curious and playing doctor, you shouldn't have been playing doctor. At 5 years old, I should not have been playing, so I remember these things, right? So
yes. So relatable.
So to write the book, I was in therapy. It's interesting because I was looking through the manuscript and there's a journaling section that didn't make it into the final version, where I'm writing about how challenging it is, because some days it's just so hard and so exhausting. And other days it feels so freeing. But in 2019, I couldn't type it. I can speak and I can tell you all the horrific things that have happened to me and the things that men have done to me and the things that the serial abuser did to me and my children. Like, I can verbally tell you those horrific things like they're a Lifetime fucking movie. I can script it out for you. I can't type it. My fingers don't type. It was a serious trauma block. And it just was not one that I was willing to continue going through such intense trauma therapy for.
Yeah.
So I went and asked a stranger and I was like, I need somebody who can help type. And so that's how we wrote the book. I did all the research and I typed all the research and the objective things. And she typed the stories after we did a video. We Zoomed, wrote this book. We would meet 3 to 4 times a week for a little under a year. I think it took us about 9 months before we had the rough draft. Maybe we were booking it. We wrote incessantly. I closed my business down completely to be able to write this book because I'm a life management consultant. And so I knew that one of my vocations needed to be put on pause to be able to take on something that's massive. And so I made those adjustments in my life and I prepared my family and I did all those things. So now I have a testimony of like my system actually works.
Absolutely.
And so that I had to overcome that. And so I had to overcome asking a complete stranger to be able to tell her these things. I remember, it's interesting because I remember we were doing final edits. It was kind of in the midst of COVID. Are we allowed to say that word out loud?
Sure.
Now.
The C word.
Yeah. And she came up here to Ohio. She lives in Texas, and she came to Ohio, and we had a writing retreat. And I remember us being at my friend's cabin at her winery, and I'm telling her these stories, and she was like, I need you to stop talking about this stuff because I'm actually getting scared. And I'm like, okay, okay. I get it. Like, let's just take, so it was intense. It still is sometimes to read through. I feel like every time I read a section or I speak about it, it's another level of healing. And I also feel like another level of armor has been put on me where I'm like, bring it on, motherfucker. Oh, wait. Oh,
hell yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Like, I just feel so empowered, and it feels great to help empower other women. So that has really helped me through this to keep me going. There's hundreds and thousands of women and messages that I've received that has made me continue to press forward in what this is, because sometimes it doesn't feel safe, and sometimes it feels like I'm re-abusing myself over and over, but I'm not. The truth is, those things, it is me. It was, and it forever will be. And I can't change those pieces in my puzzle. They'll never go away.
No.
So the more I talk about them, the more their impact lessens, and it just becomes one of the pieces that are, is there. But it is, that is the truth. It is.
We move forward with it. We don't really get over it.
No, there is. I was laughing the other day is because it was kind of like a heavy laugh of like, oh yeah, I'll never be done healing. Like, this isn't ever going to go away. Like ever. It's like, okay, bring it. Cause sometimes healing's exhausting.
Yeah. But it can also, like I said, you have those moments where you read a book like this and you go, hey, progress, right? Like, I'm not where I have been. And that's such a powerful thing too. So speaking of moving forward, how can the audience, once they have read your amazing book, continue their journey to wholeness with you?
Well, I would love for people to come and work with us. Our company, the Corner Office, actually my co-author and I came together and made a company together, which was really cool. And it really accentuates what we're both amazing at. And so in the process of healing, there's also, we need to be managing life, and I can't just let everything fall to the wayside. And so I teach life management skills so that you can have the time that you need to accomplish what you want in a better way. I believe in better over perfect. I believe that we can strive for better. Perfection does not exist. And so by incorporating these systems and formulas, you can have the capacity to accomplish writing a book in less than a year while still managing, at that time I had 5 children. So I had a new child, which was a blessing. And, so you can manage these things if you incorporate actual systems and formulas that are built for you. And that's what we do, is we build it around you and your special formula. So yeah, that's a little bit about it.
Thank you so much for being here, Erika.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.